Hello and welcome to the latest Science for Sport podcast. I'm your host Matt Solomon, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Tim Chiarolanza. So Tim is a former strength and conditioning coach who was hit by a car and given a 1% chance to live. Today, Tim's going to talk us through his rehabilitation and how his expertise as a strength and conditioning coach enabled him to get back to the best possible physical fitness during a traumatic brain injury. So without further ado, it's time to welcome Tim onto the show. So Tim, welcome to the Science for Sport podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. So can you give us a quick introduction as to who you are and what you've been up to until now?
So my name is Tim Chiarolanza. I grew up in a suburb of Philadelphia, but I have traveled a ton for my jobs. I was, for a time, a strength and conditioning coach, and I worked in the private sector, professional baseball, and then right before my accident, I was the head at my alma mater, Lycoming College.
Excellent. And since that, so you said accident, right? We'll get onto that in just a second. Since then, what are you up to?
So I work out still pretty regularly because I love being in the gym. I mean, it's my second home. I'm writing a book. I am a volunteer at my rehab center to help other brain injury patients. And then I'm starting a nonprofit right now.
Excellent. So I want to get on to accident stuff in a second, but tell me what your life was like before the accident. So obviously, there's going to be a lot of people listening who've never been in a position like yours. Mm-hmm. What was your life like before everything went down?
So I was at the gym the entire day. I mean, I would start at 6 or 7 a.m. and be there until 6 or 7 at night. And like I said, it was a second home to me. It was just something that I was one of the few people who was lucky enough to do what they love. And I really miss not being able to do it right now, but I still love that I can go and train myself.
Excellent. So accident then. Talk us through what happened, what your thoughts and feelings were at the time or afterwards. Why are we here today, and what does that mean to you?
So the accident, it was 2.5 years ago. I had just gotten done work. My wife was on her way up for the first time ever to the school. I went home. We have a dog. I went and took him for a walk. I had a couple of my baseball players come over and talk to me while I was walking in. And then they were going to Lock Haven to watch their baseball team play. The dog wasn't done being pet because he's a detention hog. So he took off after them, and unfortunately his collar broke. So he ran out after them into the street. Not thinking about myself, I took off after him. He was fine, but I was hit by a car going 40 miles an hour.
And what was then the impact of that? So obviously, car accident, big deal. What are the consequences of that?
So the most serious was I had a ruptured aorta, and if you know anything about the body, it's the largest organ in there, artery in the body. It basically pumps the blood from your heart to the rest of the body. So that was ruptured. I had a separated pelvis, which I looked up later and didn't realize how serious it was. But there's a ton of arteries that run through your pelvis, so it could have severed any one of them at any point. I had a compound fracture of my tibia and fibula on my left side. I had a collapsed left lung. I had a shattered left shoulder blade. The lenses in my eyes detached, moved up, and then reattached, which is unusual. And then an injury that showed up 3 days later was the traumatic brain injury that I still have today.
And what is that brain injury then? So you get an impact. What happens then to the brain?
So for me, it was the brain rattled around. So essentially what happened is all of the neurons in the brain severed from their connections. And I had a brainstem injury as well. So it was bleeding and swelled, which is very, very serious. And then, so for me, I basically had to relearn everything, how to walk, how to talk, everything has had to be relearned because I had to remake all those connections in the brain.
And obviously those connections play into memory as well. And I know we talked before, and you said actually can't really remember much about what happened. So
Yeah.
how do you then start to process all of that information? So you at some point you wake up and you're like, what's going on, right?
Yeah, so I woke up in rehab. So the accident was on November 16th. I woke up, the first memory I have is January 2nd or 3rd of the next year in rehab. And I actually thought I was dreaming for the first week because I'm a super safe person. Like, I couldn't think that something like that would happen to me. So for the first week, I had memory again. I thought I was dreaming. Now, after a week of still being in rehab, I decided, or I came to terms with, all right, this is how life is now. Here's what happened. It's time to move on and grow.
I think there's some big lessons to be had, but we're going to come on to some lessons later. Um, obviously, at some point you have to deal with that. So, what did the doctors communicate with you? How did that information come in? Like, because obviously someone has to tell you what's going on, right?
So for what I've been told, my neurologist at the hospital I was life flighted to told my wife and my father that they need to start making other plans because I was given a 1% chance of survival. Now, obviously, they were incredibly upset, but my dad, who knows me as well as my wife does, basically looked at the doctor and said, "You don't know my kid. Like, he's in a coma right now, but he's fighting for his life in there. Like, I know that he does that." So it's just, I've always been the kind of person where I just, whatever I want, I'm going to chase and go after and fight for. So it's just taking that and that life lesson and applying it to, all right, life is different now. I need to learn a bunch of hundred things, but at the same point, I want to get back to what life was before the accident.
And how did then like mental resilience play a role in that stage? Because I imagine physically there's going to be a lot of things that need work, but like that might not within a day or a week or 2 weeks, months, years, that might not be possible. But mental resilience is something which is going to be possible from day one. So how did that have a role in your rehabilitation?
So fortunately, I'm a very mentally resilient person. I have been my entire life. When I was younger, the soccer league I played in, I was born 8 hours before the cutoff. So I was literally one of the youngest kids in the league. And I always wanted to be as good as everyone else. Like, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I always wanted to be the best or as whatever it was. And that's the way I approach work is I always wanted to be the best I could possibly be for my athletes. It wasn't about me. It never has been. It was always about the kids that I worked with. So the mental resiliency part, it's 100% frustrating most of the time or majority of the time. But at the same point, it pushes me to continue to work to get better every single day.
So I think it's super interesting. There's definitely some stuff already that people can take from that. But I want to get into some of the kind of sports science, strength and conditioning
Mm-hmm.
side of things because obviously you've got a super unique background as a strength and conditioning coach.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're going to start your rehab process, but obviously there are some important pillars there: sleep, diet, exercise, that kind of stuff. When it comes to diet,
Mm-hmm.
hospital food,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of sucks, right? I don't know what it's like with you guys, but like in the UK, I've had hospital food, fortunately, very few times, but that sucks. So, what kind of role did diet and food play in your recovery?
So for the first, I want to say month plus, I was actually on a feeding tube because I had a tracheotomy in my throat, so I couldn't eat solid food. So then I really didn't have a choice. That it was, all right, we're gonna put your, your whatever into your feeding tube, and we're gonna nourish you to a point. Now I actually ended up losing 50 pounds over that time because one, I wasn't working out, so my muscle mass was gone, and I'm used to being considerably hungry because I work out so frequently, and obviously I couldn't eat like I used to. But once the feeding tube was removed, I was very smart about. Now, thankfully for me, my rehab center, the food was actually pretty good. It
Okay.
wasn't awful, um, but like I would at the beginning of the week, I would get a sheet where I could pick out the meals that I wanted per day. So I would pick ones that had protein, vegetables, starch, like everything I knew I needed to eat to make sure that I continue to be healthy.
And I'm really interrupting Tim to make sure you're up to date and aware of the Science of Sport Coach Academy. The Coach Academy is an overgrowing library of sports science courses, which are broken down into bite-sized chunks. So if you're enjoying today's podcast and you want to get your hands on some more great sports science information, all you have to do is hit the link in the show notes. You can get in there completely for free for the next 7 days. So hit that link when the podcast is finished. I think that's really important, and it's very easy at some point, especially when people come in and they're like, "Oh, we'll give you chocolates and we'll give you, I don't know, like nice things because that'll make you happier," and it might to an extent. But I can imagine the point at which you're like, "Well, actually, yeah, I've lost so much muscle mass, and I'm starting to. If you're eating all that chocolate or whatever, grapes is super high in sugar. If you're eating all of that, then it might not be quite as good for you as what you could be doing." Were there any other things that you did in terms of like supplements, for example? Is there anything that helped you along in that direction?
So while I was at rehab, no, because I didn't have access to anything. But once I got home, and I had access to, like, I take fish oil and vitamin D every day because I know from my time in baseball how important they are for everything. So I do supplement from time to time. Some of the vitamins I take are every day, and like the protein shakes and stuff, I'll make sure to put fruit and peanut butter and like used to before the accident. But I mean, again, in rehab, I was just so limited because I didn't have access to everything I was used to taking before the accident.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously sleep is another one of those pillars. So you got the diet stuff sorted, making some healthy choices, get your supplements when you're back at home. Um, what role did sleep play in terms of that recovery process? Because obviously, yeah, sleep plays a huge role in recovery. And I know personally working for people with slightly different situation, but people with brain injuries that they'll take a nap in the afternoon because they're super tired, and still sleep throughout the night. So, what role did sleep play for you in that recovery process?
So I was fortunate in that the COVID year for minor league baseball, I was at the Orioles, and one of my projects was to study sleep. So I read Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, which is a phenomenal book, and I highly recommend. If you haven't read it, please read it because it teaches you so much about how important sleep is. So I had the background of knowledge of understanding how important sleep was just from all that research and studied all that. So I knew that even once that my memory came back and I understood like, hey, this is how life is now. I need to, they were actually for a while were giving me medication to help me sleep because the doctors understand how important it can be. Now, sorry.
That's okay.
Now, I didn't need that, and I've actually stopped taking it because I sleep pretty well, thankfully. But at the same point, they knew how important sleep was, so they would push me. Like, I know when I was in rehab, did rehab in the morning, and then there was like a 2 or 3 hour window in the afternoon where I could nap. And then I would do my rehab again later in the afternoon once they woke me up. But it's just, I mean, it's one of the free supplements that athletes really need to take advantage of because they need to understand how important it is to their performance.
And how important was it to you then? Because obviously, yeah, the doctors think it's important. They give you some medication for it. But like, did you see a difference, for example, on days that you didn't sleep well compared to days that you did sleep well?
So I do have days where I am incredible. We call them bad brain days, where I'm like really tired during the day. And I make sure, especially now, that I'm sleeping enough because I can tell when I don't sleep well or don't sleep enough how it affects my brain the next day. So like I'm fortunate enough to one have studied it, but two I take personal experience and apply that to hey, you need to really sleep today. Like your brain is obviously hasn't recovered from the day before from whatever. So you need to apply that and really take advantage of napping and all that. Like they push me to nap as frequently as they can. Now, personally, I'm not a big napping fan because I feel like I'm wasting the day. But I understand now that I need to do that to help my recovery.
Yeah, so like the nap gives you more quality. Might take some time away, but it gives you more quality within the day to
Right.
do the things that you want to do. So obviously your background in strength and conditioning means that you also looked at the physical side too. So yeah, how did your strength coach background then help you in that rehab process? Were you able to apply some of the information and some of the skills and lessons you learned previously to help yourself get back on track?
Absolutely. I mean, my physical therapist loved that I have a master's in exercise science, that I have that knowledge of the body because they didn't have to dumb things down for me. They could talk in official terms. They could, speak freely and openly about how it would help me. And they knew that I would understand what they were talking about. So they loved that. And then on top of that, it was like I understood things that I need to do now. They would show me things, obviously, because my balance was terrible and still is. Things to help that, but I have known, like I know now, things above that I could do to help those little things like balance and all of that.
And yeah, what did that look like for you then? So obviously you want to work on balance, for example, but what are we thinking of? Just simple walking tasks, or you on a Bosu ball on beams? Are you how does that look?
So a lot of it was like one-legged standing to help train that balance portion of my body. Um, because my lens is detached, moved up, and reattached, my vision is not as good as it used to be. Because I had 20/20 vision before the accident. So a lot of it on top of that was like tennis balls or bouncy balls or whatever. They bounce to me and have me catch it. So it's just the little things that you don't think you need help with, but you really don't understand how important they can be for you in the long term.
Absolutely excellent. And excuse me, what did like a day in training, so rehabilitation training, what did a day look like for you in that scenario? Because obviously, yeah, you wake up and you've got a whole day's worth of tasks planned. Talk us through one of those days.
So for me, it was I had three therapies that I went through: speech, occupational, and physical. So I would rotate between the three. Each one was like an hour because any longer than that, obviously with the brain injury, my attention span would just go. So I would have those that I rotated through each day, and then it was like occupation was reaching me how to drive because with the brain injury, I ended up losing my license. Physical obviously is getting me physically back to what I used to be, and then speech with the tracheotomy and my vocal cords being damaged. Relearning how to do things like talk. Obviously, you could hear it's a little bit funny.
And can you talk us through one of those physical training sessions then? So obviously, yeah, I think people will be really interested to hear about the speech therapy stuff, but I think most athletes will probably look to the rehab side more than the speech side in terms of what they can take some information from. So can you talk us through what a rehab session might look like?
Absolutely. So it's different between inpatient and outpatient. So inpatient, they're trying to get you to the point where you go home. So it's things like learning how to walk up steps, learning how to do like bouncing. They would put me in like I would have two bars inside and I would hold one if I needed to and just bounce on one leg. Like it's literally that simple. It's doing little things. Um, and then really what I'm working on now is in my outpatient, I was trying to run again because I can jog, but I can't run.
Hmm.
So it's been it was a lot of work. They would harness me up and put me in a treadmill because I wanted to do that. So they
Yeah.
obviously included what I wanted in a lot of my therapy to help me get back to the point that I knew I could get to.
And that's a really interesting point, and that is something that people can apply really easily as well to the athletic training population. Is getting what people want to do in that session, that can also
Yeah.
mean a lot to them as well. So it doesn't just feel like, oh, you know what, we have to do balance tasks today. And yeah, I've done that for the last 4 weeks and I'm still crap at balancing or whatever. But you can really say, well, I want to go and run a marathon, or I want to sprint in a field, or whatever it might
Mhm.
be, to bring your own side of that training process in there, as opposed to just hearing what you have to do the whole time.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, that's so important. Like, for me as a strength coach, I would always consider what my athletes would say they would like to do, and then make sure that I included those in my programs on top of everything that I knew needed to be done that day. So it was kind of a mix of, all right, the athletes really like this, so we're going to do what I like or what I know they need, and then we're going to include what they like so that they don't hate being in the weight room.
Yeah. I know that feeling. There's some athletes love the weight room and that's great, and there's other athletes who are like, yeah, we're 16 years old and we do table tennis. We don't want to be here. But when you kind of sum all this up, right? Obviously, there's tons of different lessons that athletes can take from this, and I hope that people have seen that as they've gone along. But what kind of advice would you then give to young athletes when it comes to maximizing their athletic potential, but also their career potential?
So for me, we actually turned the garage in our house into a gym. So for me, I have a whiteboard in there, and on the whiteboard is written "Greatness Today," and I look at that every day. And the reason I look at that is because I was like that when I was 32, incredibly healthy, ate well, slept well, like all the things you should do to be healthy. I was doing, and all of a sudden, I'm fighting for my life. So like, we don't know if tomorrow's going to happen. Yesterday happened. We can't go back and redo it. So for me, it's the greatness today thing that I love to repeat to myself, and I'll look at it all the time so that I understand, look, today's the only guaranteed thing we have. So I'm going to make it as great as I possibly can.
I think that's absolutely excellent. So, Tim, massive thanks for your time and effort today. It's been a pleasure talking. Where can people find a little bit more about you and what you're up to?
So for me, they can find me on Instagram. It's Tim Chiarolanza. They can find me on Facebook under the same name. And then on LinkedIn, they can find me under Timothy Chiarolanza. And I post a lot of like my rehab stuff on there as well.
Absolutely excellent. Tim, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and look forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy. Cheers. And that's it. Once again, a massive thanks to Tim for all of his hard work on today's podcast. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did at home too. Before you leave, I want to point you in the direction of the Science of Sport Coach Academy. Now, the Coach Academy is an overgrowing library of sports science courses which are broken down into bite-sized chunks. That means you can fit them in and around your busy coaching schedule. Next to that, every time you complete one of the courses, you get a certificate of completion, which will prove your ongoing education. So, if you've enjoyed today's podcast and you want to get some more great sports science information, all you have to do is click the link in the show notes. You can get in there completely for free for the next 7 days in just a few seconds' time. And if you have enjoyed today's podcast, it'd be fantastic if you could recommend it to a coach, a colleague, an athlete, or a friend. That means that we can keep bringing the best possible guests and the best possible content. And that's it. Once again, a massive thanks from me. I'm Matt Solomon of Science of Sport, and I'll speak to you next week.